morning, good evening, good night, wherever or whoever you may be. I'm Alan Arante, and this is the Recluse podcast. Today's guest is Charlene Walters. She is the author of Own Your Other and The Startup Within. She has a BA in English from the University of Connecticut, an MBA from St. Thomas University, and a PhD from Northcentral University. In this conversation, we talk about criticism and forgiveness, her affinity for writing, and what the doctoral process was like for her. We talk about her Inspirational Women Series and a few of her many article contributions. We talk about her memoir, Own Your Other, which was written partly as a response to her husband's tragic passing. I am proud to have made Charlene's acquaintance. She is an intelligent, kind person. She is powerful and great, and is truly an inspiration. I thank her for her time, mind, and heart. So without further delay, this is a portrait of Charlene Walters.
So when I originally, went to get my bachelor's, I was really into writing in English, and that was always my passion from early on. I also considered psychology, and I always sort of liked marketing and anything creative, but didn't really sort of know it yet, I think, at that time completely. So English was always my focus. It was something that I worked on with my grandparents when I was young. I worked on writing with them, and I wrote a book when I was in second grade that my teacher wanted to publish. So it's just been a passion of mine from a very young age.
So ever since you were young, did you feel like people sort of told you, hey, you're pretty good at this? Have you always felt like a good writer?
I have. I've always really loved it. It's always been something that I enjoy doing. And it's funny how I've deviated from it over the years, but you find yourself always coming back to those things you really love, right? And you're really passionate about. They always kind of circle back. So I think no matter what career you end up with, you find a way to bring the things you like into it.
An English degree, it sounds like one of those degrees that's obviously varied. You can do creative writing or manual, writing a manual for a computer or something.
Right.
But it's a very foundational degree in the sense that you could probably branch out to anything. I would assume that your skills and all the things you picked up from the English degree have transferred into your marketing and whatever pitches you're doing, or however you've reached out to clients and things. Do you feel that your degree has pretty much served you your entire career?
I would definitely say yes. Writing is definitely a useful skill that will serve you anywhere. After I graduated from undergrad, the first major position that I had was a sales position. And that's sort of where I started developing more my love of marketing and business and really found out about that side of myself. And so from there, I kind of transferred over and got my MBA. But the English has always been something that has really served me well and enabled me to communicate well. And it's also, even when I wasn't directly using it a lot in certain positions, I still had sort of that creative outlet where I could write.
Yeah. So did you've written at least one book. I'm not sure if you finished your second book already. Did you always know that you would end up writing a book someday? Was that sort of in you subconsciously, or was it a happy accident by the time it came around?
So I've always wanted to write. It's always been a goal of mine to write a book. I started a book. I probably got 3/4 of the way back when I was in a marketing position. I started writing kind of a fun fiction book, but I never finished it for whatever reason. I joined a writing group through Writer's Digest, and we would all kind of pass back and forth sections and give each other feedback. And that was a project that, I really enjoyed, but for some reason, I think life just interrupted me and I let it be. And then, when I had more to write about, I think when I had a bigger life experience, I thought that's really what I want to write about, because it's something that I think can really help a lot of people. And it's my story. And I really felt like I had something important to say, right? So that really launched me on writing that book. And from there, the memoir, from there, many people told me, you have so much experience with entrepreneurship and helping entrepreneurs and business and marketing. You should really write a business book. And I thought, oh, that's interesting because I do so much business and marketing writing for my work. I create courses and curriculum. And I thought, oh, that's different. I mean, it's something I do every day. And I decided, okay, I'll take their advice. And so I actually wrote that second book. And this time at home during the pandemic was actually good for writing because I wasn't running around everywhere like normal. And I was able to finish the second book. So actually both books are finished now.
Wow. Are they set to come out this year?
I'm still in the publishing process. So I'm looking for an agent. I'm decided after much back and forth to go to the traditional route. So I'm still kind of in the process of trying to get an agent, and that takes quite some time. So
right.
We'll see where I end up, but we're hoping, I'm hoping to have that set into motion by the end of this year.
Yeah. You're hoping to find a publisher. Nowadays I wonder, I think Amazon, for instance, has this do it yourself. I'm not suggesting this. I'm just saying that I think my uncle did this. They have this self-publishing feature, apparently on their website, where you basically just upload the text in some way and you make certain decisions and you can like self-publish. What do you think? I know this is a little off script, but I'm curious what you think about it. What's the benefit of self-publishing as opposed to finding a publisher?
So, there are so many different opinions about this, and so you can either go self-publishing with a traditional publisher or go with a hybrid, which is sort of a combination in the middle where you pay them and they sort of do all of the legwork for you. They put everything up. They hire someone to do your cover. They hire someone to edit your book. I think it's all good. It just depends on your goals. And so in my heart, I had my mind and my heart set on that traditional path, but that's a much longer path. And so I guess it depends at what point I decide, okay, this path is too long and I do it myself. I think it's all good, but it just depends. That was just in my mind that's what I really wanted to try first before I went with self-publishing. And if I do decide to go self-publishing, which I think is great too, it would just, involve hiring different people to help me with the cover. And I've already had someone help me edit the first book. And so it would just be me doing that instead of having someone else do it for me. I think there's pros and cons to both, and in all of it's good. Just for whatever reason, I'm being really stubborn about the traditional path. So we'll see where that takes me.
Well, I have faith in you. Your writing is so well done. I've read a bunch of your articles. I can't imagine it won't get picked up. So I'm waiting for that to happen for you. I was curious about your PhD. So you went to Northcentral University, and I'm just curious. All I ever hear about the doctoral process is that it's grueling, it's intense. There's no social life. I mean, what was your experience, the typical experience, or, how was it for you?
Yeah, so I think, I took a number of courses. That was all pretty straightforward. You could work at your own pace, which was wonderful with that program. I think when I hit the dissertation phase, that was the grueling part. I just, through no fault of my own, I had several chairs change. So every time that happened, I sort of got set back a bit, and it just felt like it went on and on. You had to revise something, do something else. And for whatever reason, I decided to go back and get my PhD when my first daughter was 1 year old. And I thought, well, the baby's one. What can I do now? Which might not have been the best idea. And then I also, while I was getting my PhD, I had a second child. So I had toddlers. I was working on the PhD, and then actually my husband passed away while I was mid-PhD. And I kind of thought to myself, there is just no way that I can finish this. Like, there's just, I'm working, I've got 2 kids, this has happened, and I'm never going to, I told myself, forget it. There's just no way possible. And I just really hung in there and stuck with it. It probably took me longer than most, but I did it and I was so happy about it. It felt like such a victory for me after, so much kind of grief and setback.
Wow. Do you think you seem like a very strong woman anyway, but I'm curious, was it sort of a fork in the road at that point? If you decided to stick with it, you would be, legendary and powerful at the end of it. But if you didn't, do you think your life could have went a different way?
I really believe in education, obviously, or else I wouldn't keep going back. And I do think with every degree that you get, there are more opportunities that come about. And definitely I've gotten positions that I wouldn't have gotten otherwise if I didn't have the doctorate. So I think, yes, that I didn't realize it probably at the time, but if I had decided not to, it would have led me in a different direction, certainly.
Is a PhD, to you, does it seem like the golden ticket on a resume? As soon as an employer sees that, it's like, yep, I want that person. Do you get that sense that you have this bidding power just because of the PhD alone?
Not necessarily. I guess it depends on the employer. And so in higher ed, which is what I've been for, the last, I'd say a good 15, 16 years, a doctorate does more for you in terms of positions. It depends on your field. In some, it wouldn't make a difference. In some positions, it really would. I think definitely in higher ed, you have more opportunities with a doctorate than you would otherwise.
And it's also, now that you're mentioning it, it's, there are probably a lot of people with PhDs around you, I would imagine. So it's not like, you're, I don't know, let's say a sales manager or how can I say this? I wonder what's more typical. Here's my question. That there would be a PhD in a university or in some business. I'm assuming more than likely, you see more PhDs in higher ed. So yeah. Anyways, I thought that was interesting. Basically, I feel like so many people want that PhD slapped on their name. Obviously, it's a prestigious title, and I don't fault those folks. So I was just curious about your experience with that. So
yeah, it really depends on the field. Definitely, there's some fields it's definitely better, and that's another thing that's always been a goal of mine. I think originally I had thought about getting a degree in organizational behavior or becoming an industrial psychologist. So I sort of always had it in my head that I wanted that doctorate. It just evolved over time of exactly what I pursue.
Wow, you said industrial psychologist. What is that? A psychology person who studies people who work in industry, or what is that?
Yeah, they work at a corporation more or less, and they work in business. It's more really based on organizational psychology. But I deviated. I sort of have moved, as with anybody else, over time you sort of change what you're interested in and what you decide to go for.
Yeah. Your research, you mentioned on your website that it involved consumer internet behavior and analyzing why consumers purchase on one site versus another. What were some of your findings? Can you recall to that research? What sort of things did you find out about human behavior and what causes a person to buy on one website as opposed to another?
So yes, certainly. I looked at a number of factors, including peer reviews, the aesthetic quality of the website, the security of the website, as well as I looked at all the factors by gender. And really the number one factor that influences somebody to buy from one website versus another are the peer reviews, like the 5-star reviews you see on Amazon. That was the number one. And that was for both genders. So it's really strong. But we sort of know that anyways intuitively. But it was cool to see that kind of play out very strongly in the research.
That's so interesting because you know what? That probably is that's probably the single factor that I pay attention to most as a consumer. Like if I'm looking at, what headphone, I'm going to buy these headphones for $20, or whatever, I immediately go to the reviews. And it's so interesting how sour I could be on a product just from a couple bad reviews. So I don't, whether they're correct or not, my intuition as a consumer is to sort of be worried. Oh, why did these people say it was so terrible and give it 1 star? It at least makes me weary of the product, whether the person is being accurate or not. So I think that is so interesting that that's one of your findings about consumer purchasing. So you went into that research with a hypothesis, but I assume you didn't force it. It just turns out that what you guys found out, you sort of already knew.
Right. I mean, I wondered really whether it would vary by gender was really the big hypothesis, and it really didn't. It was consistent. There was a slight variation in the percentages, but really they fell exactly the same way for both. So it was super interesting to see how it ended up.
I would imagine it would have happened during your PhD, maybe in some general ed for your bachelor's. But did you have to take any psychology or sociology?
I did in my bachelor's and also in my PhD, more organizational behavior type of classes. And I initially started as a psychology major before I switched to English. So I've sort of always been interested in consumer behavior in general, human behavior, and then consumer when I got to my PhD. So all of your passions, as I think I said earlier, it seems like we always gravitate back towards what we're excited and passionate about. And so for my dissertation, I really could have written about anything, but it's interesting that I sort of landed on consumer behavior.
Yeah, like you said, it really just all came full circle, your interest in behavior and psychology, and with the writing background, I mean, that all just feeds this PhD, it sounds like. And, your writing is strong, and I'm sure that was a great asset for writing a thesis.
Oh gosh. Yes, the dissertation was never ending. My kids, were so young, and I would have a babysitter come, and I would go ahead to like a coffee house and work on it. And they just thought I was working and
wow.
When was it over, and they were so, we were all so excited when I was done. I could barely kind of defend it without crying because I just felt like such a sense of, like it's finally done. So it was great.
After all of this is said and done, do you feel like you sort of are in your dream position?
Yeah, I mean, I think it keeps evolving for me. I'm never one to sit still, so I keep moving to the next thing, to the next thing, to the next thing. I was just having a conversation with someone the other day how I wish I was a little more just complacent in life and didn't want to always just keep moving on. So I think as long as I keep growing and keep doing new things, and I think all of us in life are really put here to have a positive impact. And so that's sort of where I'm at now. I want to have, just get to a point where I'm helping people as much as I can while I'm being intellectually stimulated at the same time.
Where do you get all of this energy? I mean, it sounds like from the moment your kids were born, probably before that. I mean, how do you have this energy to pursue an MBA, a PhD? I mean, do you have like a great diet? Do you exercise? Do you read a lot?
I do read a lot, and I do also exercise a lot. Now, I was going to a gym with a personal trainer, and ever since COVID, I've done virtual sessions, which have really been great because I think all of us are getting a lot less exercise now than we did in the past. So it's really been, a lifesaver for me. And I really recommend that people just take care of themselves in general. It really helps. But I think I've always sort of been naturally ambitious, almost too much. So yes, it comes together that way.
Okay, let me shift gears a little bit. You've contributed many times to a few periodicals like Up Journey. There's another, I think it's entrepreneur.com.
Yes.
But in particular, there was a couple, again, you're so complex, we could probably talk an hour about any subject, but I sort of want to narrow the focus. You do a lot of, for lack of better terms, self-help sort of stuff. And you had contributed to an article about not taking things personally. Why is it that people generally are not good at taking criticism.
Yeah, I think because, and I'm guilty of this myself, we can't separate it from ourselves. So we take it as an attack on ourselves, when really often it's just meant to be constructive. It's meant to help us out. So I think the more we can be objective about listening to it and not getting defensive, the better off we'll be. And that feedback is always great for us, as people, just to kind of take it and really think about it. I try to always look at things and see, okay, what is my behavior in this situation? How am I reactive? And try to remove yourself. And if you can do that, it's really great. Is it easy for everyone, and does it come naturally? No. But I think the more that we can take it as a gift, because criticism really is a gift. It helps you to improve and to get better. And maybe it's not always 100% accurate because people are looking at you through their own lens, but there is always something that you can get from whatever someone has said to you.
Yeah, I in particular am not very good with criticism, and I don't know what it is. I mean, it's not like I go crazy or anything, but as soon as somebody tells me, or just criticizes, I guess, and tells me how I can do something better, even though I know it's important to hear that perspective, it's very easy to have your feelings hurt, like it's just a gut reaction to feel like you're being attacked. And that's that defensiveness you were talking about. What can what are just some simple steps that, say, even I could take to better judge the criticism I get?
So you can just step back. I mean, and you have to take it with a grain of salt too, because there's a lot of motivations. It could be someone's jealous or something. So you just have to kind of step back and really just separate yourself from whatever they're saying, and really just go back and analyze what your behavior, it just depends what they're criticizing you on. So maybe, you have a podcast and somebody's criticizing the way you delivered something. So maybe you go back, think about their feedback and listen to what they said, and decide for yourself, just look at it more objectively as if you were a listener, right? And see if it has any merit. And then maybe there's a little bit of it that's true and maybe not, but you have to decide for yourself. And I think just not let it knock you down, right? There's a lot of things that can knock us down, but perhaps there is something that you could get from it. Maybe they said you weren't talking loud enough or whatever, just try to look at it more objectively. I think that's the best thing to do. And maybe ask others for feedback too, see if they agree.
Yeah, I've been getting better at it. I just recall, probably especially when I was younger, just having this physiological response, like my head getting hot and just it hurting my feelings. I am getting better with that over time. Do you think that being able to listen and accept criticism and look at it objectively, is that essential for most fields? For instance, the sales position or a management position or working in higher ed. Is that willingness to hear criticism essential for success?
I really think so. And some people are just so really great at it. And I think the better you can become, the more successful you'll become. But it's difficult. I mean, I agree. I mean, I believe everybody still has sort of that gut reaction, right, to criticism. But the more you can take in and take a step back, the better you'll be able to progress in your career. And it even happens to me if I find something happening where maybe an employee is acting kind of aggressively towards me or something. I have to step back and just see what could be bothering that person, or what are they trying to tell me really with what they're saying? And sometimes it's not face value what they're saying. There's more to it. And I think the better you are as a manager, as an employee, as a business professional at hearing that, even it could be a client that's telling you something, it'll lead to your ultimate success the more that you can kind of listen to that feedback and really learn from it. But it's challenging.
Yeah. And now that you're mentioning it, it's sort of criticism sort of even crosses over into our marriages and our friendships. Like, for instance, if I'm talking to my wife and we have a disagreement, it's very easy to get defensive and think she's trying to prove me wrong or what have you. But I'm realizing how important it is to be able to have these difficult conversations that sometimes involve criticism. So if you immediately shut somebody down when they're criticizing you or trying to tell you how they feel about your behavior, it can really go one of two ways. Either you shut them down and you don't listen to what they're saying, or you listen to what they're saying and you try to take it in. Whether, you don't we always want to be the best we can be? And, if I'm hurting somebody's feelings or doing something wrong, I should know about it.
Yes, absolutely. It comes down to communication. The more we can kind of remain calm and listen to what the other person is saying and ask questions if we don't quite get it. I think if we get defensive and we sort of get, angry, or we don't hear more, we might never really quite understand, because it's not ever that simple, right? So we have to ask questions to really understand exactly what they're telling us and their feedback. And people are all different, so they're looking at things from a different lens. So what they're experiencing might really not be accurate for what you're really doing or what you're feeling, but they're seeing it from their own perspective. So you have to kind of step back sometimes and just get in their shoes, and then you'll understand it more.
You had also contributed to an article for UpJourney about forgiveness. And forgiveness is very hard sometimes. I find that there's this concept called archived grievance, and it's just what it sounds like. Basically, if somebody offends you, your wife, your spouse, your friend, we often tend to sort of keep those hurt feelings in the back of our mind, even if we at the front of our mind say, "Oh, it's not a big deal, I forgive them." Sometimes those things are archived in the back of our minds. First of all, what is forgiveness? What is forgiveness, and why is it so hard for people to do?
Yeah, it's really hard because, again, it comes down to ego and not understanding completely what happened and what transpired, and not being able to put yourself in the other person's shoes and understand. Maybe you're taking something that happened the wrong way. Communication is big there, of course, and I think just letting things go. There are some things that are absolutely horrible that'll happen to you that you don't have control over. And if you just hang on to them and are angry about them and sort of stew on them, you're really not hurting anyone but yourself. You really aren't. So if you can, find it in your heart and in your mind to move past it, then it's really better for you, because the more you kind of, just linger on something, it really is not hurting the other person that you're upset with, right? It's just hurting you. So it's really not good to kind of sit in that spot.
That's very true. Again, it's a constant state of, or condition of evolving with people and ourselves. And I've noticed that when being upset with somebody, whether it was a big deal or not, for instance, I don't know, having a disagreement with somebody, or I feel like they did something to hurt my feelings, and then I spend the rest of the day upset. And after an hour of being upset, you're right. You're only hurting yourself if you're letting your mind just wander and stew, and you can practically see the steam coming out of your head. The only person you're hurting is yourself.
Yes, absolutely. And so if it's something, minor with a person or someone you're close to, or, someone you work with or someone you live with, really, I think diving into that conversation and getting to the bottom, because they might not even be aware that they hurt your feelings or that there's something that's happened. Because again, people are looking at things completely differently, as the participant or as the receiver or as the one who sent kind of the negative message. So I think really just having a conversation, if it's a bigger issue where there's really been something wrong done to you, and really those kind of things, I mean, you definitely need to experience them and feel them. But I think the more you hold on to them, the worse it'll be for you. For me, when my husband died, I was just so angry at a lot of things, a lot of people, a lot of stuff that happened. And it wasn't really until I let that go that I could kind of move on with my life. And I really learned that in a big way. Just in my book, in my memoir, I talk about, a lot of sort of self-help topics and what I walked away with from that experience. and one of the life lessons I would say is just know when to let things go, because you really do have to let things go that you can't change, and sort of forgive the experience and move on.
Yeah. I want to be sensitive about this. Your husband, he got in an accident, is that correct? And he passed away from it?
Yeah, he was a pilot and he was in a helicopter accident, and he basically left for work one evening and just never came home. So it was very sudden, very sad. And, obviously I had a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. So it was just a big shake up and a sad time for me. So I was really angry about that when it happened.
Yeah. I assume there's still some level of sadness that you feel, but in terms of that, the intensity and how intense that time was, how long was your grieving period in terms of, what was it, months? And I ask because, for instance, my mom, when my grandfather passed away from cancer, her grieving period was intense, and it lasted maybe 2-3 years. And my mom, she's grown a lot since then, but I'm curious about you. How long was it really hard? I mean, because I know how awful that must have been for you.
Yeah, the thing about grief is it's so different for everyone, right? So it's hard to really say what the average person is. And some people have all of their grief sort of upfront, and some people are sort of delayed. I was for a long time just in shock, I just almost couldn't even absorb what was happening to me, to us. And I sort of put myself in sort of that shock and would tell myself, oh, he's at work or whatever, just to get through. And having young children really kind of helped distract me. So it went on, it still goes on. I mean, I still have moments of grief even now, and it's been 10 years and I still will go back to it. But I think even in writing my memoir, it was really therapeutic because I felt I went back and revisited everything that I was feeling during that time. And early on, I'd say it was a lot of shock for maybe the first year. And then the second and third year, I was kind of working things out really. And I'd say past the third year is when I started to really accept, okay, this has happened to me and I've got to kind of pick up. And it just would come in waves, and even still does. I think even when we hit the 10-year anniversary, I was just, I experienced that sadness again, to a large degree. So it just comes and goes. I mean, I think I've accepted, yes, I've lost my husband, but I think having 2 girls, I always have a hard time with, they don't have their dad, right? That's something I can't change for them, and that I feel really sad about.
And they were so young when it happened. Is it still a conversation? How do you tell them that what happened? You said they were 2 and 4. I wonder if what you said to the 2-year-old, if they can understand at that age.
Right. So I didn't tell the 2-year-old because, like you're saying, I didn't really think she had an understanding. I mean, in so many words, she knew sort of, she would say things, but it wasn't like a solid conversation. My 4-year-old, she definitely knew. We had the conversation. And my husband's brother had passed away, earlier, and we had been talking about it, and I had, as deep of a conversation you can with a 4-year-old about him and what happens. And when someone dies, we don't see them any longer, but they're okay. So we had that whole big base conversation. So when it happened, I would say, hey, remember I told you about your uncle? Daddy's gone up to heaven now too. And, and it was just very sad, but we had already had like the heavy portion of that. I mean, obviously it's a very heavy, but so this was more, she had a better understanding than she would have otherwise. It was sad. I mean, and I went to see a grief counselor right after that, and her advice was, your children still have a father. You have to keep them alive through telling stories. And at the time I thought, that's terrible advice. He's not going to be there. I don't like this at all. And I didn't understand, but she was absolutely right, because that's what I've done. I've tried as much as I can to tell funny stories. And even now I still interject stories so that they have a sense of who he was and kind of know what he was like and what his personality was like and times that he spent with them.
How did you meet your husband? How old were you when you met, and how old were you when you got married?
So we met when I was 31, and we were both on vacation. So it's one of those kind of random things where we met each other on vacation in Key West. We kind of just stumbled into each other, and we hit it off, and we dated long distance for a while, and then we got married. It was a year and a half later. So we got married pretty quickly because we were long distance. And, it's just one of those things, it was meant to be, because there we both were at the same place, and, we just really hit it off.
Do you remember who initiated the conversation at the very first meeting? Did he walk up to you? Did you walk up to him?
Yeah. So interestingly enough, his friend walked up to me and introduced himself, and then he and I just ended up talking. So it was kind of a funny thing. It just it was his friend who started it. So really we owe him that.
Oh, so you're saying his friend was the one who was sort of putting the moves, so to speak.
Yes, exactly. And then we sort of drifted off from there. So it was just kind of a group. I was with a group of friends, and he was with a group of friends. So.
Wow, so good. It was a good thing that this other person had some initiative and some mojo or something.
Yes, definitely. Who knows what could have happened otherwise, right?
Do you feel like you've gotten to a point with, in your grief and in the situation where you mostly think of the good times now as opposed to the painful times?
Oh, definitely. I definitely have moved past, really the feelings of anger and sadness. I still think of the night I found out about it as the worst night of my life. And I hope that I never have something that comes close. But I definitely do now think of all the good times. I think of the fun. He was really fun, kind of a gregarious guy, telling me jokes all the time. And I still think about things, and picture him like in on the joke. So definitely I do concentrate on that for sure.
Yeah, what were some of his qualities that, what made him a good man, an attractive man? What was it about him that you loved and love so much?
He was really, really smart, just fun, quick, he was really sweet side, and it just, one of those guys that, or not guys, any person really could be, but just someone that everybody wants to be around, right? That's sort of, it could be like if you were in school, maybe he's like the class clown kind of thing, and people just want to have, just want to be around. Like I always felt that I was this person people liked, and then once he was around, it would be like, oh, hi, Charlene, where's Patrick? So it was kind of funny that way. But he was just, really kind of good natured and, up for an adventure and smart and just fun to joke around with, and we were good friends.
Mm. Well, thank you for sharing that. I know that that's not an easy thing to talk about. And actually it's really awesome that you can funnel your experience and your feelings and everything you've learned into your teaching and your, what you wrote, your book. So it's really cool, that you can turn something around like this that's very difficult, and hopefully somebody who reads your book, it's called Own Your Other, right? Your memoir?
Yes. Own your other path in life. So really the meaning of that is, and that's one of the biggest sort of lessons I took from that is when Patrick first died, I really kind of hung on to the fact that I was from this, we had this traditional family. It was he and I and the two girls, and we were doing, the same things all the married couples in our circles were doing. And I couldn't quite wrap my arms around my head around the fact that no, I was a single mom now. Like I just that wasn't anything I ever hoped, or really wanted. And I sort of fought it for a long time. I felt like, no, I'm just like everybody else, I didn't want to be separated out. And it wasn't till really I accepted that and owned it. Like, okay, I'm a single mom. I have to start thinking about things differently. This is my life now, that I really started to do much better and kind of move forward in life. So that's really the point, the name of the book. And I hope, to help other people who might have a similar kind of change in life, that this will help them sort of see that it's okay and that you can get through it.
Yeah, I think you're a great influence, and I think that book will help a lot of people. I'm looking forward to reading that as soon as that comes out. Let me change gears a little bit. You've written, or you've conducted, a handful of these interviews, and it's a series you call Inspirational Women. Can you tell me about that? I've read through some of the interviews, and some of the women are just so inspiring. What can you say about that series?
So I just decided, that I really wanted to do something to lift up other women, because I think sometimes with women, there can be a competitiveness, right? And I think men sort of are naturally better about helping each other, not that women aren't, but there can be and I personally always feel I'm so happy for people when they're successful. And I like to hear those stories of women who've done great things and turned things around. So I just wanted to sort of celebrate some of these amazing women that I've known and met and kind of tell their stories. So I decided to kind of interview them for that series. And it's been great, even finding more about the people that I'm interacting with.
Yeah. And so you sort of answered it, but I'm wondering, why strictly women? Do you feel that women are underrepresented, or it's just by coincidence that you just know all these great women? What pointed you in the direction of women in particular for the series?
I think originally it was that I feel like women are underrepresented. A lot of times we don't hear their stories. So that's why I started it. And I just was interacting with a lot of women. I think I've had men actually reach out to me about being in there. And I thought, I need to incorporate them at some point. I sort of will probably keep with the inspirational women and then add men at some time too, because I think men have a lot of great stories as well. But I sort of started this way, and, hearing some of the stories about what these women are doing, and it's just inspiring for me, because I think women do need strong role models, right? I think, we see a lot of men in higher positions, leadership positions. So I think it's helpful for women to see that as well, and to see them overcome challenges and kind of move on.
Yeah. I agree. There's something to be said about representation. So, for instance, a friend of mine had posted about this short film, I think that Pixar or Disney put out on a Disney Plus, and it's about a gay person coming out to his family, and it's like an animated short, and the family is sad that the son didn't feel like he could come to them, and so on. But what hit a nerve for my buddy is that he had never really seen a gay character portrayed like that, and a family response portrayed like that, like in a Disney animation. And he felt so validated, even at this age. He's 30 or 32 or something. So even at this age, it's important to feel represented, and the influence that representation might have had when he was younger. Maybe he would have seen things a little differently. So I'm sure that your series is inspiring tons of women. It actually reminds me that I want to represent folks that normally aren't as well. So the past, I think, 4 interviews have been just women. And I think I was actually inspired by your series. So thank you for that.
Oh, that's great. That's nice to hear. And I think I didn't touch on it earlier, but with the book too, I think for single moms, I think there's such a negative kind of stereotype with them in many cases in movies, like you're saying. And I think I want people to understand, that a lot of women, they didn't choose to be a single mom. It's just life happens, right? And so I think we all need a lot of understanding, not just about women, but about people in general that are in different situations.
Yeah. In terms of some of the women that you've interviewed, what stood out? Say, maybe you can give me an example of one particular woman. What's one thing that stood out about, say, one of the women that you interviewed that made you think like, I really want to find out more about this person?
So Erin, that I just interviewed, she does defense training for women. She's been trained in hand-to-hand combat. She's been in the military. I just thought that was so cool. And then she had been named by a Mongolian witch doctor as strong woman. So I just thought, this is not a story that we hear every day. It's just so inspiring that she's done all of this. So I thought that would just be great. And some of the other women, sometimes, I'll choose to interview somebody and they don't necessarily get into exactly why I chose them in my interview questions. And I thought, that's a missed opportunity sometimes. But, there's been different things. There's been other women that have had, to reinvent themselves at, say, age 50 or something, and they lost their husband left them, or, other different things. They've overcome cancer. They've overcome a lot of different obstacles. And I think the more that women and people in general share their stories, they know that they're not alone, right? That other people are going through the similar things.
Yeah, totally. Erin sounds like such a badass. That is so cool. It's that cliche scene I'm getting in my head of a defense trainer just, beating the crap out of one of those, or teaching women where to hit a person, to hit an attacker.
She really is. And she's written a book, and it's the main character in there is a female from the military, and she's really the same way, the main character. So I've read her book too, and I think that's great. And then, it got me curious. And when I've gone on to people's websites to find out more of them, it even inspires me more, because even, I chose them. I didn't know everything quite about them until I really dug in. And then I find out more and more. I thought, these people are so interesting. This is amazing,
Yeah. And one thing that I've really learned, so I've done, this is my my 24th interview. And I've really tried to push myself to talk to people that I normally wouldn't, maybe people that I would have judged in the past. And it's very interesting what happens when you engage with somebody that you normally wouldn't have. For instance, the last interview I did, it was sometime this week. I had interviewed a sex worker who isn't particularly ashamed. It's how she makes ends meet. There's a whole story to it. And by talking to this woman for an hour, all of a sudden I'm sympathizing with her. I'm understanding her and people like her. And so just engaging with these people really shifts your perspective, I think, in the right direction.
Definitely. And in my second book, the business book for entrepreneurs, it's about, I have a section about boosting your innovation and creativity. And one of my suggestions is exactly that, talking to people that are different than you, because the more you do that, the more you expand your mind, the more you think of new possibilities, you see things from different perspectives, and it gets you leading your thoughts down a different path, which really helps you become more innovative and more creative. And I do that a lot when I'm struggling with something. I purposely call someone different than me and run the problem or whatever it is by them, and they'll give you something that you never would have thought of. So I think the more in general we talk to different people, the better for us as people, right? We become better people, we understand more, and we push ourselves too.
Yeah, totally. It's I think that's great advice. That's a great idea. I love that idea of when you have a problem or if you're stuck on something, to ask somebody different than you. And yeah, it only stands to reason that they would offer something that you wouldn't have thought of yourself. And it really, my mind really has been opening so much lately with some of these interviews, just talking to people that I normally wouldn't have. And I just feel like a better person. And I would also suggest that to anybody. Just in terms of your second book, the entrepreneur book, it's an entrepreneur book for women, right? That's the target audience, or not the audience, but that's the target person. That's the person you're talking about.
Right. It's a mindset, entrepreneurial mindset for women. And it's again about the underrepresentation. More and more women are getting into entrepreneurship right now. It's an increasingly high rate. And women are turning to that as a way to kind of take control of their earnings, take control of their life. And it's different. The mindset shifts that they need to take are different than those for men. Like, as I mentioned before, I've been doing a lot of research too, which has really been, just been enlightening me. But, men are more likely, for example, to self-promote than women, and women need to get better at those things. So it's a lot of support. And a lot of what I'm writing about too can apply to men as well. And I, of course, enjoy working with both men and women, but this was more focused specifically on those areas that a woman would sort of need more assistance with, like to kind of keep moving forward. So it's been a really intriguing project, and it's been great to kind of funnel all that I've been working on. I've worked with a lot of entrepreneurs. I've talked to a lot of them. Now, lately, I've been also talking to a lot of people who've been sort of displaced right now by the current environment and are sort of looking to regroup and what's next for them. So it was really kind of fulfilling to put that book together.
Yeah, I'm excited. I can't wait till these come out. I'm waiting. I'm waiting on you. So you got a fan already.
Good.
Thank you. What about, what do you have to say about this? So for instance, how people perceive a male, let's say a male manager as opposed to a female manager, where when the male is, forthright and demanding, it's seen as, authority and being a leader. Whereas when a female does it, it's like, oh, she's a bitch.
Yeah.
What is there to be said about that? How can we shift I don't know. Yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
So I've done a lot of research, and a lot of studies have found exactly that. There are more consequences. Women are seen differently than that. I think, the best thing that women can do is just to get more comfortable with standing up for themselves and just kind of bringing facts and just really promoting themselves and not to think about it negatively. I think the more that women kind of do that and take control and not feel bad. I think the key is just not feeling bad about standing up for yourself or, promoting yourself. And I think until in general, everyone becomes more comfortable with that, then, there can be those negative perceptions still.
Yeah, I recall when I had a female boss, I actually didn't care. Not that I'm like above anybody, but I didn't see her as really that different. I had the same respect, and same thing goes with, at our apartment complex, the manager. She's like a very tough woman, like a no nonsense sort of woman.
Right.
And for one reason or another, I just simply don't have any less respect for her than I would a man, as far as I can tell. I mean, she's the manager. She's the boss. So someone did something right. My mother, my wife, I don't know who.
They did. They both did.
So I know you do. I have just two more questions for you. I know you've done a lot of contributing to like self-help articles, and the books you're writing are in the service of other people, more or less. What rewards do you get from doing this work for people?
I've always been one. I really like people. I mean, I just like everyone. I've always liked helping people. I think we're all here for a reason. We're all here to have the biggest impact we can, right, on those around us. And to give someone even a little bit of advice, I'm not saying I have all the answers or that I'm perfect or, everything I say and do is great. But even if I can help point someone in a new direction or give them a confidence boost, it's it's just really rewarding for me. Like I want people to do well. I want people to succeed. And the more that I can do that, the happier I am in general.
I have just one more question for you, Dr. Charlene Walters. You can answer it any way you like. Who are you?
I am a mother. I am an entrepreneur. I am a writer. I am just a person. I am someone who really, I consider myself a life enthusiast. And I feel like just based on my experiences, I feel like you have to get the most out of life you can. And that involves spending time with the people that are important to you. That involves giving back and having a positive impact on others, and also just enjoying life. I think we're all so busy, caught up on, where we want to be in the future, what we want to achieve, what we want to accomplish, that we don't slow down and enjoy life. So I would say I'm all those things. I'm a combination of things.